Assalamu alaikum everybody, and a very warm welcome to episode 5 of the Sam of Somalia Show. Hope you guys are having an awesome week. Let's get stuck into it without any more dilly-dallying. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our 5th guest on this show, Brother Shahin-ur Rahman. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
How are you today, Akhi?
Alhamdulillah, how about yourself?
Alhamdulillah, very well, thank you.
Pleasure to be on.
Good. Actually, this is, I should probably let the audience know that you're actually a guest on episode 11 of the Dialects podcast.
Yes,
is
I
that
was,
right?
yeah.
Cool, so if any of you are interested in that, then please go over and watch that, inshallah. That's available on all different podcast platforms and everything too. So just for those who don't know you on this channel yet, because I know obviously we had you as a guest on the ‹Sam channel, but do you want to just briefly introduce yourself, inshallah?
Briefly introduce myself, okay, I'm going to start actually. So I'm a ʿAlimiyyah graduate, which means I've studied Islam traditionally. I was a former blogger. I'm a curriculum writer by profession, and I'm currently a master's student at the University of Warwick.
Curriculum writer where?
Safar Publications, actually.
Oh,
it's
nice,
an organisation based in London, although it's catering for the Muslim world, really, as in throughout the English-speaking world.
Nice.
For the Muslims. So we write textbooks for children learning Islam.
Really nice.
And of course, adults and stuff can use it as well.
That's really nice. Okay, so in this episode, inshallah, the main thing I really wanted to get into was talking about how we pass language onto our children, sure. And because obviously you've recently had a little girl, is that right? How long ago? 9
months ago.
Oh, okay, yeah. May Allah bless her. May Allah bless her. Okay, good. So what's your background, by the way, like ethnic background?
My ethnic background is Bangladeshi.
Okay,
yeah, and but of course I was born and raised in Britain.
And also a resident here in the greatest town in the UK, Northampton, the heart of England, the pearl of the UK. Alhamdulillah, good. So okay, so lived it. Were you born in Bangladesh though?
No, I was born in Northampton General Hospital actually.
Oh, okay. So same place as me.
Very specific.
Yeah, okay, nice. So is your wife Bangladeshi as well?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And obviously being a person who's interested in the Arabic language and is kind of invested in its use and preservation among the Muslims, do you want to pass both Bangla and Arabic onto your daughter, inshallah?
That is the plan, inshallah, and of course it's easier said than done. But yes, I think Bangla is obviously important for our identity perspective and many other things. And Arabic is also important from a religious sense, and not only from a religious sense, but across the globe. Considering we're living in a globalized world, it actually unites the Muslims across the world kind of thing. So I think, yeah, Arabic is pretty important, or very important.
You know, I think, like, just speaking from personal experience, obviously I have 2 children now, alhamdulillah. I have Yusuf, who you've met, obviously, who's 3.5 now. And then Yunus as well.
Yeah,
he's only...
I need to meet him as
well.
well.
I know, yeah, inshallah. He's only like 4 months old, so we're not really... Language isn't really something that we're sort of thinking about too much, but a real advice I'd give to yourself and anybody out there is really have plans in place as early as possible, because it really runs away from you. Like...
How early would you say is early enough to start?
Well, I would say it's more about your family having that as a lifestyle within your family, because if you think, you know, it will start when the child is 1, right? They're not speaking really at 1, but like if you think we'll start at 1, by then you've got to really kind of change your family dynamic and change your lifestyle and stuff around it, which is really hard to do. Like with my son, obviously, like I'm Arabic with Sam. People would assume that my son speaks Arabic, but he doesn't really. Because it's really hard to implement that at home. With like my wife's best language is sign language. Yeah. Actually, so use of sign language is really good. Obviously, English is really good, and understands Somali. And then we kind of encourage active use of Somali as well. But like living here in the UK, he doesn't really. There's not the necessity for him to use it. Like even all the people who speak Somali to him, they understand English as well. Yeah. You know, like I really try with my in-laws to say, look, like just pretend you don't understand him when he speaks English. Like. I don't know how you like. They're smart enough by the age of 3 to know that you're just pretending. Do you know what I mean? But it's really important to just think about that as a lifestyle before.
100% agree with you. It's such a very relatable within our Bangladeshi communities as well. And for example, when we were growing up, we actually had the advantage of growing up bilingual. So though later on we became multilingual, or many of us. We grew up bilingual, speaking Bangla and English simultaneously. So in the house we'd speak one language, despite our parents being completely fluent in English and being raised in Britain, going to school in Britain. And
so you did still speak Bangla, even though you knew your parents?
Yeah.
A lot of time speak English.
So till today, I actually speak Bangla with my parents and speak Bangla with my siblings as well, which is not something very common within my generation. Because in my generation, you see everybody speaking English with their brothers and sisters, sometimes even with their parents and uncles and aunties and things like that as well. But in my personal family, we actually grew up speaking Bangla at home, and we spoke English in school or on social media, on the phones and things like that. That's basically how we grew up.
So how about with like, because I was at the Barbers the other day. Do you know Brother Mujahid? You
yeah.
introduced
Give
me
him
to
a
him.
shout out.
Yeah, mashallah. Shout out to Brother Mujahid here in Northampton. Like I was in there the other day. He's obviously Bangladeshi, and like some other Bangladeshi brothers came in, and they're all English. Like, they're not English. They're born in Britain.
Yeah.
They hold British passports, but they were born here, and like they know this culture, right?
Yeah.
But they'd still speak Bangla to each other, right? Like. That's something that I haven't seen so much in the Somali community so much. Like I don't know if I don't know that there's always lots of different dynamics that play into it. Like one that I thought would be interesting to run by you is with most Somalis that I know, there is an intention to move back to Somalia.
Okay.
I don't know if that's because the community here are younger than the Bangladeshi community. Obviously, like what like the 60s or 50s, whatever.
Around
Bangladeshis
about 50,
came
yeah,
over?
50s to 70s, yeah.
50s to 70s, yeah. So like that's a bit earlier than Somalis. So I don't know if it is just something in the culture that they feel less welcome at home here, or if it's just that the community is younger. I'm not really sure.
I'm going to assume it's probably because the community is younger still. Because when you came to our parents' generation, especially the older ones and my grandparents' generation as well, a lot of them, they used to have the same nostalgia as well. That we'd want to go back to Bangladesh and things, die over there, get buried over there with our families and everybody else. But when my generation was growing up, we didn't really have that because this was home for us.
Yeah.
And this is important not only from a from a language or linguistic perspective, but even psychologically as well. There's actually been a lot of studies in education and in psychology and things about identity and how language and how communities, especially when it comes to migrants from one country to another, how does their language and their religion and the communities around them shape their identity.
Got it.
So in these types of things, it has a really big impact, and what role does language play in your life, kind of thing. There's a lot of studies been.
That's interesting. That to think about what role it plays, because recently I surveyed my whole audience across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook about whether people who particularly the Somalis. There's a lot of non-Somalis who follow my work as well, obviously, but like particularly among the Somalis, whether they're worried that their children growing up in the West, most of my audience in the USA, UK, Canada, and then like Scandinavian countries, whether they're worried about their children not going to grow up speaking Somali, and like none of them said they don't care if they learn Somali. They all care about their kids growing up learning Somali. But 85% on average said that they were actively worried about it, and that's interesting. Well, I thought like, well, if you guys speak Somali, why is it that the kids aren't? Like, what more do you need? Do you know what I mean? So I thought I thought this is particularly why I wanted to do this episode, because we could perhaps, because obviously you're a person who's in education and stuff as well, that maybe we could talk a bit about, well, what's the gap then? Like, why is it that parents aren't passing their language on to their kids? And I thought, is it fundamentally a problem with our families?
I don't really think it's as simple as that. I think it's multi-layered. So I actually, I'm not sure if you know, I used to work for a Somali brother. Okay. So in tuition, after school tuition, and so I actually learned quite a little bit about Somali culture and family backgrounds and things like that from him. And one thing I noticed is he raised his children speaking English. Yeah, so they can understand Somali, but they're not necessarily so confident in speaking it or actively using it. Yeah. So I asked him once, why don't you speak to them completely in Somali? Because it's not like they're going to suffer from English, because you're growing up in England, you're going to school in England, you're not going to suffer from it. So he said to me, it's actually a bit more complicated than that. Now he's an adult, he's a parent, and I'm teaching his children and things like that. So one thing that really hit me at that time, he goes, sometimes what happens is if you're going to enforce Somali, or in our case Bangla or something, alone without any English involved, then what happens is you can compromise or you can sabotage your relationship with your children. That if there's something going on at school, there's some kind of bullying going on, something else happened, the teacher was unfair with you, or whatever's happened, and you come home and you don't know those same vocabulary to talk about emotion, to talk about bullying, to talk about these modern day Western issues, as we'd call them, and the kind of vocabulary we're used to in Bangla or Somali or any other language, it doesn't really cater for that type of a context. So these children would come home and they wouldn't say anything, or you could tell visibly they're upset, and the parents would say, what's wrong with you? Can you tell us if something happened at school?
That's a much more complex and interesting issue.
It is, yeah. So I heard of this a few years ago myself when I was working in the tuition centre. So he was saying at that particular time, he's like, you have to make a decision. Do I want to raise them in Somali, but at the same time distance myself from them potentially? Or should I let them speak English to me, but at least they're open with me, at least we have a good father-son relationship.
Did you find that issue with Bangla though? Like, did you find you could communicate with your parents about all the kind of things that you would in English?
Let's be honest, you can't.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't, and it's not because of a deficiency within either of the languages per se, but it's about the exposure we have to the languages. So we come from a rural background in Bangladesh. It's not an educated, urban society. Whereas in English, you probably grew up in the villages in Long Buckby, but we grew up in an urban, Northampton. It's pretty much a city, although technically it's a town. Very multicultural, very middle class or whatever you want to call it. Although we're not middle class, but the town's middle class. And so the types of issues you go through is not the same thing that you talk to your parents about. You might talk to your friends about, you might talk to relatives about, but you wouldn't really talk to your parents about, because there is a generational gap. That's one big thing as it is, because my parents were first generation or second generation, depends how you want to look at it. We're either second or third generation growing up in the UK. So our problems are different, our situations are different. The kind of things we were going through in school is very different. We grew up in a technological world, and we grew up in the post 9/11 world as well. Because 9/11 happened when I was in year 5 in school. So after that, the landscape in the UK just completely changed, especially after 7/7, everything completely changed. So even religiously speaking as well, you'll see a lot of people who came from illiterate backgrounds. Like, a lot of our grandparents or ancestors, they couldn't read or write.
Got it.
Yeah, they couldn't read or write.
That's the same with most Somalis, by the way.
Yeah, so if they came from illiterate backgrounds, then your religion is basically an oral tradition, somewhat. And then when you come into England, you've got a lot more of a literate background. You're educated, you can read and write, you can access literature, you're living in a globalized world, you've got the internet around you, you've got so many different types of people around you, it's multicultural. Your learning is very different. So your attitude towards religion would be very different.
That's a really good point.
Your attitude towards, and those types of things have a deep sentimental value to your culture, to your identity. So you might have a clash of culture versus religion. You might have a clash of a generation change. You might have a clash of so many other things. So that's where, if you look at youngsters today, you think, where does the role of language, or what role does language have in your life? For some people, it might be important. I want to stay connected with my roots, because if I don't know where I came from, how do I know which direction I'm heading? Whereas others would think, hold on a minute, what's the point of me learning Bangla or Somali when it doesn't have any practical significance in my life?
That's a really good point about kind of having the different languages. Usually when we think about different languages, people who maybe don't learn languages themselves always think that they're just the same information but with different words. But it's really not that.
No,
do you know what I mean? Like as you're saying about the experience that kind of you guys have growing up here in the UK. And let's face it, like most Muslim immigrants grow up in cities and stuff, like their urban environment, and most of them actually have come from rural environments back home as well. So not only is it a completely different time, but even like geographically it's completely different as well.
And philosophically as well, your worldview can be very different.
Of course, 100%.
If you come from a rural background, if you come from a poverty background or farming and things like that, the values that your families will have will be very different from those living in urban societies. The types of things you value, it won't be the same.
So does that mean though that because our environment's changed and we've kind of learned English for the environment that we live in, does that relegate the importance of learning sort of quote unquote like back home languages?
No, I don't think so. Because there are other things that learning English in an urban society, it'll let you access a lot of the things that we need in this world today in the 21st century Britain. You can access the internet, you can access literature, you can go to university, you can go into the corporate world, get a fancy job and whatever. But there are other things that you're not going to get. For example, understanding a rural lifestyle, understanding empathy with others. Instead of having a 9-to-5 work life where it's all about, let me just make my money, pay the bills and going that kind of life. You won't be able to appreciate what people in the rural world went through and what they continue to go through. So do you have empathy with others? Can you relate to other people going through different things? Can you actually appreciate a different worldview altogether? Or do you think, no, everybody should be thinking the same way I'm thinking? Why are they doing silly things in different countries for? It doesn't actually work like that.
That's really important.
So I think this is because this is actually quite deep and it's very it's a profound concept. That's why a lot of youngsters, I think, when we're growing up, we can have this identity crisis. That who am I? Well, what am I doing here? Not what am I doing here in that kind of a sense, but like how much of me is Bangladeshi and how much of me is British? And this goes back to psychological identities. A good book on this, a decent book on this, is Aminul Haq in London.
Okay.
I think it's Goldsmiths or something in University of London. So not SOAS, but the other one.
Our rivals, our worst enemies.
So he's a lecturer there actually.
Okay.
So he's a Bangladeshi himself. He was born in Bangladesh, grew up in England, East London. He's actually his PhD research was on 6 East End Bangladeshi youngsters, 17-year-olds, and watched them grow up. And he spoke to them about everything to do with their identities and things like that. And he documented all of that. So that research has been published in a book called British Islamic Identity.
Okay.
3rd generation Bangladeshis from East London. So there, it's very accessible, and there's so many things going on there. He's actually got a video on YouTube about it as well.
Okay.
There's a Guardian article and things. But that book is actually really important for the kind of things that we're discussing right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So where you've got a spectrum of different types of people. What do different things, what does your identity mean to you? What does Bangla mean to you? And how does it shape who you are?
That's really interesting.
If at all.
If I can bring you back to what you're saying about parents with their children here in the UK, you would probably want to keep. You probably want like with the Somali brother that you're talking about who chose to speak English with his children. The reason why I kind of led you down the path of whether that is the case with Bangla is because I wondered if when you grow up speaking Bangla, you have access to more. There are more movies that are in Bangla. There are probably more series that are in Bangla. There's probably more TV that's available in Bangla and stuff. Like, there's not tons. Like, there's way more in Hindi, obviously. But there would be kind of that stuff available in Bangla that maybe in Somali there isn't quite the same. Whereas you might be exposed to that kind of language growing up speaking Bangla. But to watch Somali TV channels, firstly, there aren't so many of them.
Yeah.
And also, the things that are there, there's lots of news channels and stuff, but there aren't a lot of there aren't a lot of kind of things that children would access and have characters that they relate to. In the English language, it's full of it.
Yeah, it's full of it.
It's full of stuff on the TV or in books or whatever. Like, books is another big one, right?
Arabic is getting there as well.
Yeah, Arabic's getting there, right? Like, English has it, where there's loads of characters and stuff that kids will relate to, and they'll build that language that they need. But there isn't really that in Somali. So I wanted to know about if that was the case in Bangla as well.
Now, you see, when it comes to Bangla, a lot of non-Bengalis might think it's one big language, but it doesn't actually work like that. We've got several different dialects, just like in Arabic, where you have Fasih or Fusha is your official language, and then you've got different, Darija in Morocco, you've got ʿAlimiyyah, you've got some type of thing going on. In Bangla, we've got the official Bangla, which is called Cholito Basha, it's called Dhaka, which they speak in Dhaka mainly, in the capital city. We're actually from the northeast of Bangladesh, called Sylhet, or around that region. So we have a northeastern dialect. And in the UK, most Bangladeshi migrants in the UK speak Sylheti. A lot of those who speak Dhaka either went to France or they went to America or other types of places. But in the UK, the majority speak Sylheti. So in that respect, we do have TV channels. But again, as you said, most of them are either news channels or they're for adults. They have a chat show like this or something like that. So the news channels will always be in formal Bangla, which, let's be honest, nobody really understands. Or if you can tell, yes, it's our language, but you just completely don't know what's going on.
Let alone, you might not know what's going on, but let alone relate to it. Let alone relate to the people.
It's too formal. Bear in mind, what did I say about where we came from? Is a rural, illiterate background, uneducated background, and news channels are very formal. They're overly formal. They're very professional, and it's almost like a class gap as well. But,
do you think in a way, because there is like a formal Bangla, do you think that in a way has actually slowed down people who might speak like a Sylheti Bangla, because they can't access that main media. Because the reason why I ask is because, like, in Somali, there has been an attempt to kind of standardise Somali. There are a lot of different dialects and stuff, and like the way people speak in the south is really different to how people speak in Somaliland and Puntland and stuff. But there has been an attempt to kind of standardise Somali using a northern dialect, because, I mean, cities in the north like Hargeisa and stuff, they do have more stability and stuff than places in the south. But the rest of the country said, nah. They just use whatever they want still. Even the grammar books and stuff that are written by people in the south, they heard that people were standardising Somali in the north, and they were like, Nah. So still all the media outlets that are in the south and stuff, they'll still use those dialects.
So it looks like Somali is quite primitive still in terms of its development and formalising.
Well, you can't say primitive because of the... no, I'm kidding. I know exactly what you mean, though. But
it's obviously an ancient language. There's a very rich tradition
behind
it.
And yeah, obviously what you mean is that it's in its early stages
of development.
Of being standardised, exactly.
Yeah. So Bangla has already been standardised as it was. We've got literature in there, all these types of things. However, British Bangladeshis won't be accessing any of that. At most, we'll be able to read, little bits here and there. Take about 10 minutes to read a page or something. And you might, be able to write your name and those types of things. But in terms of children's TV shows, we don't. I don't recall seeing any children's TV shows.
No.
What we did have growing up, and maybe there are more coming out here and there, but of course I'm not too aware of it anymore. But we did have some Sylheti dramas, like sitcoms kind of thing, but just one-off dramas. We call it natok in Sylheti. It just means drama. So those types of things, when they came out, it just goes viral across the Bangladeshi community because it's our language, it's our kind of community as well, where it'll be like East End in London or somewhere like that, maybe Birmingham or something. And it's British Bangladeshis growing up and talking about their identities and things, the differences they have with their parents, and then a double life they might be living, and those types of things. Like if somebody gets involved in drugs but they don't want their brothers and sisters or their parents to know about it, then they'll show all of that in a it's just the same things that you're going to find in a Hollywood film or something, I guess. But I like the idea that you're talking about having visual or audio based learning platforms, not necessarily in terms of learning the language, but having an immersive experience through TV or film or something, regardless of whether we think it's right or wrong or something. And you pointed out Hindi as well. So Hindi is a good example because many of our Bangladeshi communities know Hindi.
That's why I mentioned it.
The reason they know Hindi is not because we've got anything to do with India. It's got nothing to do with Bangladesh speaking Hindi or anything. It's purely because of Bollywood, and purely because of not just Bollywood films, but also because of TV sitcoms or dramas and things. So if they can do that with Hindi, which fair enough, it's got similar grammar structures and things like that, but you can pick it up over a few years and people get obsessed and just immerse themselves in this type of literature, if you want to call it visual literature. And I think we could do the same thing with Arabic. But with Bangla, maybe not so much because we don't have that much content out there. Apart from nowadays, you are having a lot more, skits and sketches on Instagram and YouTubers and things like that.
But I'm saying that there should be more of an effort to create it. Like if countries that have a lot of their people have gone to live in Western countries. If they have any dream of them coming back one day, I think they should invest in ways that people who live in those countries can preserve those languages.
100%.
That's a big.
It takes a lot of funding, though.
No, it does. It really does. But that country should be invested in it. And if our parents, if we're invested in our kids having the option, even if they choose not to move back one day, like I generally find among Bangladeshis, they don't seem to have much of a plan to. But like among Somalis, it's
but
really
our elders did.
But
because
that's
we
a
grew
good
up
point
here,
that you made,
we didn't, because we think, hold on, we grew up here, we're going to stay here, what are we going to go somewhere else for?
Like the example with Hindi and with like Bollywood, that's a really clear example though of just if you have enough stimulus, whatever it is, whether it's in books or in this case obviously film, then that just bridges the gap, doesn't it? But that just isn't available in a lot of other languages.
It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have an active command over the language, but you can passively understand it. You can. So when I've seen Bangladeshis when they speak Hindi, and you laugh at them because of their accent will be way off and the grammar will be way off, but they can at least they can communicate. They can communicate, but usually they adopt a bit of a mafia style language. It's like why try to have that?
What do they become like Bollywood villains?
Kind of. They have that. You'll go to a chicken shop or something. I don't know, and you get in, and over there in the Desi culture, we kind of I'm sure it's the same in Arab culture as well. You have to bargain with them. In England, you don't do that. You don't go to a shop in Asda or something and say, oh, it's $10.99. Just give me $8.99. You're not going to do that. But in England, in those kind of communities where the shop owner will be from the subcontinent as well, people do that. So when they speak to them and trying to bargain and they're trying to speak Hindi or Urdu or something, which is very similar. It is the same language essentially, but just they're written differently. But the way they communicate, it just reminds you of Bollywood or something. What are you trying to imitate that for? But I guess that's the only exposure they've had to the language.
Because obviously, I know with a lot of our Arab brothers and sisters, like there's a lot of kind of Arab weekend schools and stuff here in the UK, like especially in London. Like when
we have one in Northampton as well.
Really, what like for Arabs, like an Arab one?
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay, because
I'm not sure how active it is.
I've never known of that for Somali. by the way, where people because at these
we have tons of them in Bangla, by the way.
Oh really? Okay.
Well, we did. At least about 15 years ago, we did. Yeah. Now we still have them, but I think it's naturally gone along.
Because it seems like the kind of education that Arabs get when they go to these weekend schools is actually quite good for the language.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like they mess around a lot and they're badly behaved and stuff, but but at least they come out of it with like a decent command of Arabic.
Yeah.
You know,
with Arabic, because it's a living language, because it's a lot more relevant, not only from a cultural perspective, but also it's religiously used as well. Yeah. And you can't really detach the religion from the Arab culture anyway. Yeah. You can strip Arab culture from the religion, but you can't really strip the religion from Arab culture necessarily. Yeah. But in Bangla, we don't really have that because, like we said, the formal literary Bangla is not what we speak. So we'll go to Bangla school, at 10 o'clock on a Saturday or something, and everyone's messing around, or you just go to the water dispenser. Oh, there's a water dispenser. Let's get some water. You're just messing around really, and you have to learn the alphabet, and you have to start reading certain sentences and things. But once you're reading those sentences, you don't have a clue what's going on. Well, we didn't have a clue what's going on. I'm sure other people do because it depends on who their teachers are. Is their pedagogy they're using the right methods of teaching. Yeah, we didn't really have that. We just got told you read it like this. This is the vowels. This is the consonants. You read it, and you just have to read it without having a clue what's going on. So you won't really have that attachment with what you're learning. So even now, after so many years, I still can't read a Bangla in that sense. But if I see a post or something, I might try to read it, just look at it. But it'll take me a while to figure things out because I'll read it like a child, basically. Yeah. But with Arabic, that's not the case because you will understand what you're learning.
Yeah.
Whether you speak the formal dialect or not is irrelevant because once the teachers teach Arabic, they will teach the meanings of those words and those sentences and apply to their culture and whatever else is going on. But we don't have that in Bangla.
Is there in Bangla, is there are people ever very protective of their dialect? Like for example, will people ever make a case for that the dialect of Bangla that they speak is correct and like correct people who use another kind of Bangla?
Grammar Nazis.
Does that exist in like dialects of Bangla?
I'm not really so sure, to be honest. Possibly, but what I have seen there's actually a couple of things I'd want to mention here, and there's a reason why I don't think we're as rigid on it. Yeah, but it's because of the bigger history with West Pakistan, and we'll get to that in a bit actually because of the language movement. But in terms of British Bangladeshis, we don't really have that because within our Sylheti dialect, each little village is speaking with slightly different rules and things anyway.
Even from village to village?
Yeah, okay. It's mutually intelligible. You can understand everything what's going on, but you'll speak with your own in your own little way.
Right.
And you'll see this thing. You'll see this with masjid imams. You'll see this with friends who come from different villages. You'll see this at university or elsewhere. Everywhere you go, you'll find people who are Sylheti, they are Bangladeshi, and you can understand them, but they just have slightly different vocabulary.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's just region to region or village to village. These things.
Sometimes I feel like with Somali that kind of holds Somali back a little bit. Like it kind of puts people on edge around creating Somali language resources. Because like even for me, I just have to muscle through a lot of it. Like in my Instagram, like a little while ago.
Why don't you create it?
What something. Like I'm going to share with you a little idea that I have. I'm going to run it by you, inshallah, because I think that there is something. I think that there is something that I could create, which could bridge some of the gap, maybe, inshallah. But something I was going to say is like even like the Somali word that you know, right? What's the Somali word you know?
I know quite a few Somali words.
Oh, do you? What about the cardamom pods though?
The cardamom pod, it's a hell.
Hell, yeah. Okay, so hell is sometimes spelled H-E-E-L, as in like hell. Yeah. And then sometimes like I've read various recipes and stuff that spell H-E-Y-L, and even other times it's been like hail with like H-A-I-L. So there's like 3 different spellings of it, but people will sometimes message me aggressively and correct me on it. Like for coffee, I've seen about 11 different spellings for that. But really, I just plead with the Somali community to say, like, look, we're in a situation where that isn't the problem. Yeah. Like whether you spell qahwa or kahwa, that's not the problem right now. It's all Somali and it all works.
Yeah. So that actually brings me back to the language movement that happened in before Bangladesh became Bangladesh in 1971. We actually East Pakistan and West Pakistan, which is today's Pakistan. And before that, of course, the whole thing was India, but we don't need to go that far back. Now, what happened was, we don't really want to get into the politics of it because it's quite political, but what happened was the general who was in charge of West Pakistan wanted to impose Urdu, the lingua franca of Pakistan, basically, upon the whole of Pakistan.
Yeah.
Despite the Bengali speakers being more, as in they were the majority.
Yeah.
So I think it was about more than 55% or something. I can't remember exact statistics, but they were Bangla speakers, and even though Urdu was quite dominant, but it's not more dominant than Bangla, and he wanted to impose Urdu onto the whole of Pakistan.
Yeah.
So that created a bit of a revolt kind of thing. You think, hold on a minute, why are you getting a bit nationalistic for all these types of things happened? So eventually what happened is the Bangladeshis united on that, despite, and this is a big lesson to learn, despite all these different dialects we've got, despite all the variations we've got, the Bengali community united on that, and they defended the need to maintain Bangla as a language, and they basically revolted against Pakistan and things.
That's really interesting.
And we had there was a civil war and things going on, and it eventually became Bangladesh. And people don't understand what Bangladesh means. It's not just a random word. Bangla is the language, and Desh means country.
Okay.
So it's the country.
Wow,
where we speak
that's
Bangla.
fascinating.
So that's why a lot of Bangladeshis, you'll find if certain types of communities might want to impose Urdu onto Bangladeshi students today, and we tend to feel a bit hesitant about it, or not hesitant. I think there's a certain level of I'm not really sure what the words are here, but you will feel a bit of ghayra for Bangla, because we don't want Bangla to get wiped out, especially because our ancestors and their relatives and other people fought in the war.
But for this case, for those who don't know what ghayra is, it's you're just protective over it, really. That's not the whole meaning. There's a lot more to
it's just a little bit of a being a little bit of a grammar Nazi. It's actually ghayra.
Ghayra, of course.
So ghayra is actually a type of food or something.
Okay,
it's a type of ration.
Yeah.
I know the Arab word.
But it's ghayra with a fatha on the
ghayra. So ghayra means it's when you have a certain level of jealousy, but not in a bad way. It's when you feel protective over something that belongs to you, and somebody else is trying to usurp your right. So I think it's important we explain this concept. The word gets used a lot, but a lot of people don't really explain it.
Or even just in case. Just in case people hear it with men having it over their women, right? It's, in that case, it's not that you own them necessarily, but you have a responsibility over them.
But they are yours, as in somebody else shouldn't go around looking at them, talking to them, or getting a bit too giggly with them. It's hold on a minute, you need to watch your space. This is for me to, this is our space. We're going to protect this, and we're going to have a sense of jealousy over them, not in a bad sense of jealousy that I think I'm going to lose them, but I need to protect them from being used and abused by other things or other people, and it doesn't only apply to people or women or things. It applies to many other things. In this case, language.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So we tend to feel a bit of a ghayra about it. Now, sometimes you'll hear a lot of people getting into pseudo-linguistics kind of thing, saying, even if Urdu was imposed onto Bangladesh, it's not like Bangla would die, because you'll have, you still have Punjabi around today, you still have Hinko around, you still have many other languages. Why do you think Bangla would be wiped out for? But there's actually a lot more deeper levels behind that, because when it comes to dead languages have died across the world. In New Zealand, they speak English now, and their local language that they had, I can't remember what it's called.
Maori.
Yeah, so that is considered a dead language. It's not extinct, it's still around, but it's around in a way that's not living anymore. So the reason that happens, or one of the biggest ways languages die effectively, is when another language which is considered more prestigious, it has more prestige, takes over it, then people they feel a bit of an inferiority complex and try to take the superior.
No, it's a step to it being relegated into dying, isn't it? It's the same in Cornwall. We have a language, Cornish, down in Cornwall, but nobody speaks it anymore. I mean, really, it's like the use of it is just more tokenistic, really, and that's the same with Maori. Like I went to school in New Zealand for a little while. Did you know that, by the way? No. Okay. Well, like when we go, we have to learn a haka and stuff. Like, you know what the New Zealand rugby team do and stuff? Like, you have like a school haka, and different areas have their own hakas and stuff. But it's really tokenistic. Like, the haka has words that are in Maori, but like people aren't, even the Maoris themselves a lot of the time might not know it or use it. But that's the same with the Cornish, right? Like, there are Cornish people who have been there for thousands of years who don't speak it. But
you still need to do your video about the Cornish king who wrote
I
poetry.
know. I recorded like a little 1 minute thing I put on Instagram.
Yeah, okay.
But I will do that sometime because for those of you guys who aren't sure what we're referring to, there's something really fascinating like a few hundred years ago where a particular king in Cornwall wrote some praise of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in some of his poetry, and it's really fascinating, isn't it? I am excited to share it with them. But I think I wanted to say about the role that language has.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a big part of why I do the Sam of Somalia thing. Like a lot of people would be perfectly right to think, why do you care about the preservation of Somali? Like, obviously, I'm obviously not Somali, right? I'm not really invested in.
Really?
It's really not Somali. But for me, obviously I've mentioned, my wife's best language is sign language.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't want to share all the details, but like my wife suffers with hearing loss, and like so her Somali has suffered. So I do kind of see it as a person who loves languages myself, an opportunity to take my children's Somali language learning on myself in many ways, because you've got to bear in mind, like, my family aren't Muslims as well, and we also want the option to move to a Muslim majority country one day, just to have the option. We may choose not to, or we may choose to do it and realise it's not right and come back, but we want to have the option open, and that is a big part of the importance of the Somali language in my family, because like really the Somali language, I see it as like the chain that really connects my future generations to Islam and back to a Muslim majority country. So like that's a huge part of it for me. Like really like a lot.
It goes back to identity afterwards, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So identity, but then also just what you want for your future generations as well. You know, because the language that you know massively influences your worldview. Because you know, recently I was telling Asher about. But by the way, brother Asher's sitting over there. He was a guest last week on the Sam of Somalia Show. But did you watch that episode, by the way?
No.
Did you listen to it? It's quite a cool episode about his company. But anyway, I won't spill the beans too much. They go back and watch it themselves. What was I saying? I lost track there. Were you listening to me?
Yeah. Going back to almost the majority country and things like that.
Okay, yeah. Going back to almost the majority country. Yeah, that's what we're saying, wasn't it? So it's kind of what you want for your future generations, isn't it? And that's, you know, that's a big part of why. Like the Sam of Somalia channel is basically me just letting people watch me.
Yeah.
try to learn Somali.
That's really good, because that has an organic feel to it. Because when it comes to language learning, a lot of people think you have to take it in a very linear way, where you learn this rule, you learn these words, and then you do some practices. But when you go through a journey, that's really what language learning is. It's a journey in itself. It has to be organic. It doesn't really follow a system. You have to use a system to go through it, but your own journey that you're documenting would be natural and organic to you. And that's why when you document that, you're naturally going to get 25,000 subscribers.
You know, here's something that I want to run by you, which is interesting. Kind of goes against us people who quite like I like in my head to idealise education a little bit. I like the idea of sitting at the feet of a scholar and then learning from them. But something I've realised with this YouTube channel is that, like if you look at the different Somali language resources in the world, like there are online courses out there are books out there, there are teachers who teach online, but I believe that I'm probably the most effective in the world. And I'm not Somali and I'm not a teacher, right? But that's exactly the point, right? Because the way people learn now is different. Like the way that we learn, our education system has pretty much stayed the same for thousands of years, but we've changed so much now. And like, you know, when people get to come on a journey with me and experience it with me, it's like people are learning behind their own back. Like people think they're just watching bumbling Nina Adan speaking Somali, right? but they're actually learning Somali in the background. You know, so it's like sometimes when you read a book, when you watch a movie or something, like you sometimes learn a lot about the culture of the country that movie's set, but you're not watching it for that reason. You know what I mean? Like
it's subconscious.
I remember one of the first like novels I ever read was The Kite Runner. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Khaled Hosseini, I think.
Yeah, Khaled Hosseini.
Yeah, of course. But like all of his books are set in Afghanistan. Yeah. And like I realised after reading it how much I knew about Afghanistan. But I wasn't reading it because I cared about Afghanistan or anything like that.
It's the same thing with many of us with American culture as well, especially those of us who have never been to America.
Yeah.
We know pretty much everything about, or quite a lot about America just because of sitcoms and films and dramas and news and social media and everything else. And especially those who were who have been involved in watching Bollywood and things, you'll be aware of a lot of well, that might not be as representative, but you will learn a lot of things about, you know, the Indian culture and things like that as well.
That's
so
interesting.
it's just it's natural. And this is what we're going back to about learning these things through experience. Then if you're talking about sitting at the feet of a scholar, that will only be done in a formal setting when you have a formal you know, reason to formalize your education.
And the students need to be motivated as well anyway, which is a big
Whereas
difference.
A lot of time when it comes to learning culture, when it comes to learning these types of things, or not learning language, but excelling in your language or improving your language, you wouldn't really do that in a formal setting. There has to be informal immersion, and the way you would do that is by reading literature or watching videos and those types of things. So I think pedagogically speaking, in terms of methods of learning and teaching, one important aspect that we learn from the Sunnah, actually from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, from the Quran as well, is the Quran actually emphasizes an experiential learning, an experiential learning where you go out قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. Travel in the world and see what happened, you know, in the people around you. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ is another one. Take a lesson of people with insight. And if you look at the rest of the ayah, it was an incident that actually happened. So that particular incident, why did it happen? What happened there? And Allah is telling us, learn from these types of events around us. So it has a very experiential type of approach where you have to reflectively engage with what's going on around you. And that happens more so informally than it does formally, because education, I don't believe education is something that's passively received from a teacher. If anything, the teacher will be there to help you engage critically and reflectively engage with something. And it's your journey that you go about in your growth, in your personal development and in your learning, which is why in the Islamic terminology, what do we call learning? We call it talab al-ilm, seeking knowledge. We don't call it husul al-ilm, the acquisition of knowledge. We call it talab. You have to actively go and seek it. So that happens in various different ways. So a learner is somebody who will I'm not going to say self-taught. In a lot of the Western contexts, they say self-taught, which is not always the case. But they are self-motivated, where you will go and learn yourself. You will find a teacher and want to learn from him. You will find books to read. You will look for videos to watch. You will go to you know, different towns and cities or even countries to engage with people, you know, of various skill sets.
I always wondered why. Perhaps you can help me with this with my Arabic, inshallah. Like, I always wondered why. I remember, like, even when like teaching children Arabic with like more simple words, you learn this verb darasa, which we need to study, right? And then, but we learn the word talibun for a student, right? Well, why do we not say a daris? Well, is a daris another thing?
That is, well, not really, but
I've never heard it.
You could say mutadarris, but I think that's very rarely used.
Yeah.
And that's why a teacher is called muallim, but you call him mudarris as well.
Like I'm kind of asking if it's embedded in the Islamic understanding of learning that we do talaba. You know, that's really interesting.
Yeah, because the word darasa doesn't actually mean to study. It does mean to study, but linguistically speaking, it means to wipe something away. So you say atharun darisat. I'm not sure if you've heard that somewhere. When you have ruins from, let's say, an ancient civilization, and you've got they've got remnants of their land. So these are ruins that are you know, being wiped out. Or you might say indarasat. Indarasat, it means it's just been wiped away.
Wow.
So it's said that what you're supposed to do with darasa or yadrusu dirasa is your studies will wipe away your ignorance or wipe away the effects or the ruins of not knowing something. That's apparently that's supposed to be the case. But yes, we say talib ilm or yatlub or talib.
So are those verbs that you'll find in the Arabic dictionary, you'll find indarasa and tadarrasa?
Tadarras, I'm not sure about that. In darasa, you'll definitely find that.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And darasa itself, you'll find darasa would mean the primary meaning of it is to wipe something away. Although contextually, it has, you know, gone on to mean studying, and we find in the Quran as well. I can't remember what exactly.
Maybe we'll come back to you. But just to kind of end this episode, inshallah. I mean, we'll kind of bring it to a close. Inshallah.
Just before that, the yatlub and talib ilm, I believe it's not really from the Arab culture. It's not from Jahiliyyah Arab poetry or anything. I think it's more specific from an Islamic context.
Interesting.
Where the Prophet ﷺ came with the message of the Quran, the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, confirming the message of the previous prophets before him, and he had the same pedagogical approach of engaging the people with their own intellect, with their own ways, and he gave them parables, he gave them examples, he gave them stories, and he he went through an experiential journey with them, or he took them on an experiential journey. So they have to seek knowledge themselves, talib ilm. So I think it came from Islam itself, and not from Jahili poetry or something.
That's really interesting. So I just wanted to wrap it up, inshallah, with just sharing an idea with you, because you mentioned, but why don't you create something?
Yeah.
To help people kind of pass the Somali language on to their children. And I thought it would be really good to kind of leverage the parents' understanding of the Somali language. Like, because a lot of people, as I said, like, they speak Somali and they want to get this Somali into their kids' brains, but they just don't know how. like it's strange that normally that would happen organically. Like normally, in Somalia, you don't normally think about how you do that. Like, you use the language,
you wouldn't need to,
and the kids they kind of pick it up. Like that normally works, but we need just kind of more stimulus, really. So I was thinking of an idea of like a subscription that parents can have, where they get something like in the post every month, and they have stimulus for having like Somali time with their kids, because it would also kind of inspire just better family time as well, which is obviously important.
Definitely.
But there's loads of challenges with that, like actually creating the resources, having the knowledge to create those resources, being able to distribute them, and then also like you can't always predict how big Somali families are going to be as well, like how many of its resources. And mashallah, tabarakallah, a lot of time they have big families, isn't it? Mashallah, mabarak. So yeah, but that was kind of an idea in my head for something to kind of develop a little bit, inshallah, because to start thinking about a curriculum, but not a curriculum in the sense that people will sit down with a textbook, but a curriculum of like family scenarios that people can incorporate into their normal family life at home.
Yeah.
Because because that way you can really, because a lot of the time the parents, they want to teach their kids.
Yeah.
Like, the parents are invested in spending time with their kids and teaching them, but then they're not teachers. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're doing other things with their lives. Like, not everyone has to be a teacher. So just to kind of create something like that actually just stimulates the Somali language speaking and the active use of it from the kids in the home. That's just kind of an idea that I have.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant, because we need more of these things. It's not just it's not going to be one size for all, obviously, and language doesn't work like that. So some people will be linear learners, some people will be visual learners, some people will be kinesthetic learners, and you of course have to cater for all types of things, all types of learners. And parents, their job isn't really to teach them in a formal way. They are teachers. Parents are naturally will be teachers to their children, and that's the role of a parent. But I wouldn't really say teachers, they're more educators. And education can happen in various different ways, including in an informal context and experiential way. So that's what parents would naturally do with them. And when it comes to language, especially because Somali is not something that's been formally documented or formalized, standardized, that oral tradition has to continue if it wants to survive. Especially at the face of prestigious language like English, which is dominating the world now, and of course the Somali language is written in English script. So that itself would be something that I'm not sure how you'd want to go about that. But when it comes to speaking, it has to be done in an active way. And I don't think standardizing the rules would necessarily help. It will help to some extent. But you don't want it to become too rigid either. And parents, when they speak to their children, they will have an organic, natural. It just come out of their hearts. So you don't really need to worry about rules and things. Even if it's wrong, it'll be something that's socially acceptable wrong.
So it's kind of more. I guess I kind of more have in mind like topic and scenario based stuff. Really, like I mean.
Okay.
Like because as well, like if you were to do that, if you kind of have topics like. Sometimes
football or something.
Whatever, right? Like the very first one might be. I don't know, just language around what happened at school that day or something. Whatever, that's just something off the top of my head. Or
Somali tea with a bit of hair.
Yeah, Somali tea with a bit of hair, exactly. Yeah.
Evaporated milk.
Yeah, so, but like when you have kind of topics rather than like grammar or anything too standard, like, as I say, you get to leverage the knowledge of the parents because...
Yeah, definitely.
Because sometimes, man, like I've heard people from various places of Somalia just happen to have words for things that are really like historically entrenched actually. There's some, so sometimes like their area of Somalia might have used a particular, it's really entrenched in there.
And this goes back to what we were saying towards the beginning of this of this chat show actually, about those things that language isn't something where you just switch for another word, switch to another word with the same meaning, because it doesn't really have that. So some things are just, you can't translate. A lot of things you can translate, but a lot of things it's not there because they have a deeper psychological, philosophical or historical baggage with it. Whether that baggage is good or bad is something else. Now, that affects your mindset and how you look at something, how you value something. And idioms and proverbs come into a language as well, and they mean something in a deep way. Just like ghayra, I think we had to explain what ghayra is. Because in English you would say indignation, but it's not really used that much anymore.
I've never heard a human.
You say he's an indignant human being.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, let's say there's been something involved. The burglars come in and held your parents hostage or something, and you just grab a gun and shoot him. Yeah. So you say he indignantly killed the burglar.
Okay.
Yeah? So again, it's not something you'll use in everyday speech, whereas ghayra is something you use every single day. Yeah. Especially within traditional contexts. Now, just like that word that you're thinking of with a very historically entrenched meaning, if you were to, you won't be able to just give an English word for that. You have to explain what's going on, and then you'll be able to keep that alive. So you'll have to keep that alive in Somali. You won't be able to keep that alive in any other language.
That's a nice place for us to wrap up. For us to finish, inshallah, I'll teach you an example of that that's in Somali. It's not particularly for any particular area or anything, but it's something that when I learnt it, it's so obviously entrenched in the Somali context. Yeah. So a way to say "how are you," it's kind of become really common language now, but it obviously comes from a desert nomadic environment.
Mafi anta hai.
Well, mafi anta hai is really just are you good?
Yeah.
Really, but the one I'm thinking of is manabad ba. So when you have this ma something ba, it just means is it, right? I'd say if I was going to ask is this coffee, I'd say ma qahwa ba, is this coffee? But when to say how are you say manabad ba, is there peace? Is it peace? And it's historically, it would be if a group of Somalis were approaching another camp of people living in the desert, before they'd come any closer, they'd say manabad ba, because sometimes in the desert, they've got lions and hyenas and stuff out there. They're fearless of them, by the way. You meet Somalis, they're scared of dogs, but out in Somalia, they're not scared of lions and hyenas.
There's a reason for that.
You have kids scaring them away. They're get away, to the lions and stuff. But anyway, so manabad ba, when we say it means how are you, that's an English. That's the English usage of that, really historically and entrenched in the Somali context, a little bit of language, which I'd really like to create resources that empower the parents to pass those things on to the kids. Really, let's I'm sure you have loads more interesting stuff to say about that, inshallah. Maybe we can have you on the show again.
We'll come back another time.
Yeah, exactly, inshallah. That'd be really good. So, jazakallah khair for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate that, bro. I know I've taken a bit of your time today, but
no problem.
But also, just for the other people who are watching, this will probably go out on Sunday. So it's probably Sunday today when you guys are watching this. There's a video that we would have put out yesterday on a little bit of Somali poetry that myself and brother Shahin-ur Rahman.
Somali poetry?
No, sorry, Arabic poetry. Gosh, we're just talking about Somali. I'll get you to teach. And Shahin-ur Rahman, Somali poetry. All right, guys, we'll sign out. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Have a good day.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.